Hello, my name is Richard Light, L-I-G-H-T. I'm a longtime professor here at Harvard. I have my doctoral degree and my PhD from Harvard. It's actually in statistics if someone is interested. And the big reason I'm so happy to be here, there are actually two reasons I'm happy to be here. First, making this video is a special treat because here it is, first year family weekend. And I remember very clearly how my wife and I were in the exact same position that many of you are in right now. And that is, I was in the audience listening to another professor present to my wife and me when we first became Harvard parents, meaning our older daughter went to Harvard College and I was just kind of watching someone speak. And then our younger daughter went on to go to Harvard College. They had wonderful, wonderful experiences. But the point just is, I think I kind of know how you feel. You know, there were so many things we were thinking, so much to do, so little time, so much to learn. Everything is new. I did not go to Harvard. My wife did not go to Harvard College. So a lot we're seeing through our daughter's eyes. You know, meet the people they're living with if possible. Meet some of the other students who are in their first year dorms. So that's one reason I'm happy to talk to you. The second reason I'm happy to talk to you now connects to my presentation that I will now do. For more than 25 years, and for actually 5 different Harvard presidents, they have asked me and my colleagues to explore how to help make the Harvard College undergraduate experience as superb, as excellent, as memorable for students, because our students are so wonderful. I mean, you know, they're your children and, you know, your relatives and so on. So therefore, what I would like to now talk about, and I'm assuming most of the audience for this video that we're now recording, most of the audience are family members, perhaps parents, perhaps uncles, perhaps siblings. I'm going to talk to you not so much as if you're the first year student, but rather that you're the family member. You're the person who can urge the first year student to try a few new things. I also want to say one final introductory comment, and then we're going to get to the actual suggestions. I want to make 8 concrete suggestions. My favorite word in this world is actionable, meaning if you like what I suggest, you can actually do it. It's not hard. Basically discuss it with your daughter, your son, I mean, whoever the relative is. So the point is, you're not going to hear Richard Light's opinion. I'm going to share with you the result of research findings, actual, concrete, real world research findings. This is based on interviews with 2,500 undergraduates, first year students, second year, third year, and seniors, fourth year students, just like your relatives, your children, whoever they are. Okay, so I'm going to get right to it now. Here come 8 concrete suggestions, 8 things you might want to think about doing, or at least discussing with the person in your family, perhaps a daughter or a son who's a student now, first year at Harvard. First, I have every year 4 new first year student advisees. Do you know what the best bit of advice I give to them is as they first arrive, you know, slightly nervously, slightly awkwardly? They're sitting in my office, assuming we're meeting, you know, live real time, not online. But even if we're online, I'd give the same advice. What I will do is try to get acquainted, be welcoming, be pleasant. I'll say, oh, where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? Do you know what you're interested in? Do you have an idea yet what you might want to concentrate in? You know, Harvard's word for major in. Are you clear about that yet? But then I just say, I have a question for you, and that is, what is the single most important thing you can do this year, your first year here at Harvard College? And I can just tell you, the young men, the young women, you know, whoever they may be, they just usually stare very, very politely, but they basically stare at me, you know, and they'll say something very pleasant like, oh, Professor Light, what an interesting question. But I guess when you ask, what is your most important job, or, you know, what's your goal this year? My goal is to study hard and do well. To which my response, probably predictably, is, great. I hope you do study hard and I hope you do well. And that's a very sensible answer. And then I have start having some fun. The point is, I use what we learned from the 2,500 interviews, and I turn to your children, your kids, and I'll just say, but what's your real goal? And they begin staring at me, and they'll give an answer, maybe something like, oh, well, I should be engaged with a lot of activities on campus. And again, that's a great answer. And I say that, good point. Of course you should engage. You should try new things, meet new people. That's one of the great pleasures of being at Harvard. But I don't quit. And I'm finding, what's your real job? And finally they shrug and they say, Professor Light, I don't understand. What are you asking? And then I say to them, here's the bit of advice for you all now watching this video. I say, if you don't remember a word we said to one another for the last 15 minutes, I hope you do remember the next 15 seconds. Your job, your goal is to make an effort, reach out, be proactive to the extent you can be, get to know one faculty member reasonably well every semester. And you may not always succeed, but you're going to have 8 semesters here. First year, you'll have 2. Second year, you'll have 2. In other words, 4 years times 2 semesters equals 8 years. Well, just think, even if you fail to get to know a faculty member half of the time, that means there are 4 semesters where you will get to know a faculty member. Why is that important? First, they could serve as job references should you apply for a job. They could serve as graduate school recommenders should you choose to apply for graduate school. It could be a PhD program, it could be law school, business school, medical school, school of government, whatever it may be, law, whatever it is. But most of all, getting to know a faculty member will help you to engage with the many opportunities on campus. And my 2 daughters, both of whom now are very happy and proud Harvard alumni, they, when I talked to them yesterday, I told them I'm going to do this recording for you. And I just said, do you have any advice? And they both gave me the exact same advice. They're out living now with they're married and graduated. And so anyway, they gave me the same advice. They said, Dad, please don't try to imitate Harvard first-year students, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to do my best. My best imitation of your children, when I tell them your job is to get to know a faculty member, reach out, make the effort. The typical response is something close to, ooh, that's it. They just, and it's obvious for many of them, they sort of vaguely knew that, but many of them sort of, obvious as it may be, they hadn't thought about that as a high priority. And in fact, that's what transforms the great Harvard experiences. Now, I want to add 2 points because this is where mom or dad or other relatives can be helpful. First, when a student makes an effort to get to know a faculty member, many students know how to do that. They may have gone to certain kinds of high schools where that was quite routine, but there are many others. I'll be very personal. I didn't go to Harvard, but I graduated from a high school where the graduating class was 760 students. The truth is, I went to a very good college, but the truth is I had no idea, none, how to really get to know a faculty member. So here are my 2 tips. Share them with your students. First, make an appointment. Don't just drift in unexpectedly and say, oh, Professor Smith, do you have 15 or 20 minutes to chat? Because Professor Smith is probably fully booked up. Professors everywhere at any good college tend to be pretty busy. So the point just is Professor Smith may not have 20 minutes to chat. Maybe Professor Smith is teaching their class in 20 minutes and they're getting ready and preparing. So make an appointment. You all know what the words make an appointment means. A student can send an email, Professor, Jones, I'd love to chat with you. Could we make an appointment for later this week? My second tip, suggestion to you, actionable, is tell your student, your family member, do your homework a little bit. And what I mean by that is learn something about the faculty member's interests, background, what they're working on, as much as you can. You won't know everything, but it's pretty easy to Google any Harvard faculty member, young or old, man or woman, doesn't matter. The point just is it's easy to do that. And the advantage of doing that is that, that basically when your son or daughter comes in to chat with the faculty member, the professor will be able to tell in 30 seconds or 1 minute that the homework, somebody did their homework. Let me just say the best thing is Professor Light, student comes in to see me. Professor Light, I know that just last year you finished a book about lifelong learning, about how learning continues even after college. I find that topic interesting. Could we discuss it for a few minutes? Well, that's great for me. I get to talk about something I know well and I care about. And I'm thinking the student did their homework. This is already a good sign. In contrast, I've had a few students come in to see me. Here's the sad story. Hi, Professor Light. I see you're a professor of education. Could you tell me a little bit about it? And my heart sinks because what do you want me to tell you? You obviously have made no effort. And here you're going to take, a big piece of my very limited time. And I'm happy to talk to you, but, what do you want to know? You haven't really prepared. So I think you all understand. That's my first concrete suggestion. Now, suggestion number 2. I encourage your students, meaning your children, basically. Think carefully about which courses you choose. Here we are in the middle of the first semester. It's, the classes your daughter, your son already has selected whatever classes they're taking right now. I, of course, have no idea what they are, and it's different for all of you who are listening to this. But what I can say is, you're here for your children, they're here for 8 semesters. So why don't I focus on the spring? In January, early February, your daughter, your son, will be choosing spring courses. One of the things we've learned, my research team and I, from all our 2,500 interviews, is there are certain ways of choosing courses that lead to much happier, more satisfied first-year students than other ways of choosing courses. And I want to be very specific. A question we asked a random sample of first-year students at the end of their first year. These are young men and women just like your children. I did a lot of the one-on-one interviews. I'm sitting with a young woman, and she's sitting in my office, and we're, very pleasant, having a nice chat. And I'll just say, Sally, I have a question for you. On a 1 to 10 scale, how would you rate your academic satisfaction now that you're finishing your first year at Harvard College? As you can guess, on a 1 to 10 scale, some of the students, they'll say, 10, it was, 10 plus, it was fabulous. Others will say, 9, it was very, very good. Others will say 8, I liked everything, but my expository writing instructor, I didn't like, him that much. Others will say 7, and, I found the sciences much more difficult than I thought. And there'll be a few 6s. Thank goodness there are no 1s, 2s, or 3s. That's good news. But here's what I want to convey. That's one question. The next question, but the point is, clearly, as you can all imagine, a student who replies 10 is conveying a very different first-year experience from a student who says 6. Now, the next question we asked is, to the students, end of first year, I said, look, you just chose 8 courses in your first year, 4 in the fall, 4 in the spring, with the exception of expository writing or maybe one other class. Basically, you had pretty much choice in what you chose. So my question for you to the students is, how did you choose the courses that you in fact chose? You chose them. How'd you do it? Let me get right to the bottom line, get to the point. My point is we had a slightly surprising finding. At least I thought it was surprising. That is, I like to be positive. You probably can tell, but I'm going to say this in a negative way. The least satisfied students, the ones who said 7 or 6 and did not say 10, almost always the answer to the question, how'd you choose the courses that you in fact took this past year? They responded by saying, oh, yeah, I remember exactly how I selected my courses. And that is, I chose them so I could get the requirements out of the way. My goal was to get the requirements out of the way. Anyway, I shared these findings when they first started developing with my many research colleagues, my faculty friends, and even a group of student assistants, like research assistants who worked with me, which was one of the big pleasures of doing all this. And the students were the smartest of all. They came up with a new question to ask, which is to ask these students, could be your children, who might say, well, it was a 7. not a 10, but a 7. It was okay. It was pretty good, but not as good as I had hoped. The next obvious question is, well, if you chose the classes to just, quote, get the requirements out of the way, question is, well, who gave you that advice? It's terrible advice. It's leading to less satisfied students. You ought to choose things that interest you, new things, exciting, East Asian studies, Latin American literature, the history of fish. I don't care what the course is, but try something that appeals to you. It's not up to me, it's up to you, the student. Anyway, so let me ask you to guess, even though this is, on a recording, I'll invite you, hopefully you're smiling, looking at what I'm saying, and I'll ask you to guess, who do you think, when we ask the students, who gave you this advice? Take the courses choose your courses, get the requirements out of the way. That's what we want you to do. Who do you think gave that advice? Answer, by far, in first place, my mother. Second place, my father. Third place, my parents. Fourth place, my uncle. Fifth place, somebody else. Anyway, my minister, whatever it is. The point that I want to make is simply, these are the people who love, care about their children more than anyone else. They want their children to be happy and successful, yet they're giving not good advice. So I encourage you, do not encourage your students, your children, to, quote, choose courses to get all the requirements out of the way. You need to take some general education, so-called gen ed courses. Take them all in your first or second year. No. Take whatever appeals to you. Take whatever turns you on. I could tell you a story about VJ, V-I-J-A-Y. He was from California. I remember him very well. He's a really wonderful young man. And I'm sitting with VJ, and I gave him the exact advice that I just told you, which is, don't take the requirements, just get them out of the way. Choose something that appeals to you. He came back to me about 3 weeks later, Professor Light, I cannot thank you enough. The advice you gave me was a winner. And I said, really? What are you talking about? And he said, oh, remember you said, take something that is appealing and exciting. Don't wait till junior or senior year. Do it now and, like spring of first year. So I said, oh, did you do that? And he said, yes. And it's my favorite class. I said, what's the class? And VJ said, Turkish. Now, this is an Indian American who grew up in India and came here, and he's now at Harvard. And, Turkish was not exactly what I expected to hear, but my reaction is, he's happy. He's excited. So that's great. We have a winner here. The point is, we had a happy student. All right, I'm looking through my notes here to be sure I cover everything. So those are 2 suggestions. Suggestion number 3. The third suggestion is, imagine we did a research study. I'll try to summarize it in less than 15 seconds. We took 80 students in their second year here at Harvard. 40 of them we knew had a terrific first year. They got high grades. They made many friends. They were involved. They're just happy. It was a great success. Whereas the other 40, frankly, wasn't so great. They did not get great grades. They didn't make a lot of friends. They were less engaged. So the point just is, we asked separately, sitting, one-on-one. There was nothing group style or public about it. Just I'm sitting with a student. And I remember just simply asking, how did you make the transition from high school to college? I hope I said that clearly. How did, you were in high school. Now you're a first-year student at Harvard. How'd you think about making that change when you got to Harvard? The answers we got, it was not unanimous, but there were a substantial number of students. Here's what the difference between the responses from these 2 groups, the happy and successful students versus the less happy and the less successful. The happy students, the ones who were just delighted to be here and things had gone great in their first year, early in their second year, they thought for a minute and said, how did I think about it? Oh yeah, I remember what I was thinking when I first came here. Well, I figured I'd have to work harder on my academic work at Harvard than I've probably ever worked before. And, in high school, I was a cross-country runner and I wanted to continue doing that. So that's good. And of course, I wanted to make a lot of new friends. I mean, that seems important. And I wanted to just, relax a little like a normal human being. And so the student said, I quickly realized that time, T-I-M-E, time is my most scarce resource, my most precious commodity, my most valuable thing in my life. I need to keep an eye on how I use my time. My point is, what I'm trying to convey is the students brought up the word time. It was not part of any question anyone asked. Now let me contrast that with a typical answer from a student who had a slightly disappointing first year. A student, in answer to the how did you think about making the transition from high school to college, a typical answer from a student was, roughly speaking, something like this. Oh, yeah, I remember when I got here. Well, I had always done very well in high school. I was a happy student. I got, close to straight A's. And in fact, that's probably why I was admitted to Harvard and maybe some other great places. So I just figured, keep doing what I've been doing. Keep it rolling. I mean, gee, it's been so successful. I'll stop. May I say, I have no criticism of a student, none, absolutely no criticism of a student who gives that second answer. Just do everything the same at Harvard that you did in high school. I mean, I was a big success in high school. That's why I was admitted to Harvard. That's not a crazy answer. I could imagine, actually, frankly, sort of saying something like that myself. But the big point is, time is the key word, the differentiated between the two groups. The second group, the less happy group, just never brought the word up. Whereas the happier group, the successful group, they kept focusing on the need to keep track of their time. Now I'm going to stop for a minute. What does that suggest? It suggests you should encourage your students, your children, focus at least a little on time management. I also am going to add my favorite remarks to my own advisees. You, the parents or the family members, you know what the words time management mean. I know what they mean. Your first year students are very smart. They know what the words mean. But there's a small problem, and that's some of the students don't know how to do it. They know what the words mean. They're just not very good at it. And so I want to give you the example. I want to share with you an example that a student shared with me because I thought it was so good about how it's a young woman, how she manages her time. I said, to her, Josephine, you seem very happy and successful. How do you manage your time? May I ask? And she said, I'm happy to tell you it's not complicated. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I know I have biology, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 hours a week. Then Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I have history, 11 to 12. So again, 3 times a week for an hour. So what does that mean, Professor Light, says this young woman to me. It means that I know right now in advance that I've got a free hour between 10 and 11, between the two classes. She said, I noticed some of my friends, they just sort of hang. They just kind of chill. She said, I think that's a nice way to say they don't do anything. I mean, they just kill an hour. Whereas what I try to do is something useful. It doesn't have to be academic. It could be go for a run to keep in decent physical shape. I mean, literally just go for a run to keep in good shape. It could be return the 3 overdue library books, just get the darn job done. It could be hang around, with my boyfriend. I mean, she just said, at least the hour should serve some purpose, as opposed to just, looking at your watch, just another 25 minutes to waste. Anyway, I'm done. So the big point is time management. Now, you all know, as parents, you all know this very well, but you may want to remind your students about the importance of time management, that they should think systematically. All right, I'm going to catch my breath now. Here comes suggestion number 4. We seem to be doing pretty well. I'm going to zoom through and we're going to cover all 8 of them. Suggestion number 4, I'm going to make up 2 words. The students don't tend to use these words. These are my words, but they convey, you'll all understand. A lot of the students who we interviewed, now I'm talking about seniors now, not first years, seniors, when asked, what are the decisions you made starting in your first year that led to your overall experience at Harvard College over the 4 years? The happiest students, not all of them, but many of them, basically use words. I'm going to summarize them in 2 words: investing versus harvesting. Let me repeat it: investing versus harvesting. By investing, all I mean is when a student says, I was the editor of my high school newspaper in high school. I was good at it. I know I was good at it, and I enjoyed it. And it may have even helped me be admitted here. Who knows? Who knows? But the point is, when I got to Harvard, I had a choice to make. Do I want to continue and work on the Harvard Crimson, the Harvard newspaper, or one of the other, publications? Or do I want to try something new? Maybe join an a cappella singing group, maybe join a ethnic group, maybe join a religious group, maybe join the mountain climbing club, maybe join the ballroom dancing group. Anyway, the student, who knows what they'd say, all different things. Harvard has 400 plus, more than 400 extracurricular activities. Many of them are open admission, like ballroom dancing doesn't turn people away. Mountain climbing does not turn anybody away. So there's lots of opportunities. The point just is that's investing. That's trying something new. Now, in contrast, what's harvesting? Harvesting means pay off, capitalize on, harvest the big investment you've made so far in your life. And now you might be only, 18 or 19 years old, but that pay off, capitalize on the investment you've made and something you're good at already. And so the idea just is, an example would be to the high school editor, newspaper editor, continue working at the Harvard Crimson as maybe one day and you become an editor, maybe even an editor in chief. Then you go to work for, the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. So the point just is striking a good balance is the takeaway point between some investing and some harvesting is not always easy for a 19 or 20 or 21-year-old or 18-year-old. I encourage you to discuss that with your children, your family members. And if a first year is watching this, I encourage you, the student, to think about it. This business of investing versus harvesting, those are my words, but I think you will get the idea. Okay, I'm going to keep whipping along. I think I'm going to get to all 8. The 5th suggestion, I encourage you, the parents, to encourage your students, meet outside of class in small study groups. When I went to college, obviously many years ago, when I went to college, talking about the schoolwork outside of class often was considered cheating. Let's discuss the biology homework, or let's discuss the readings assigned for the literature class or the chemistry problems, whatever it may be. Professors would say, you are not to discuss this outside of class with others. Talking to others is cheating. Can I just tell you, it's all different now. This is not your mother's or your grandmother's Harvard. Most professors encourage meeting outside of classes. I should say in graduate school, Harvard Business School, Harvard Kennedy School, Harvard Law School, students are strongly encouraged. Meet outside of class. Everybody's got to have lunch. So meet over lunch once a week or twice a week, whatever you'd want. A group of 3 or 4 or 5 students, just form your own group and go over the homework so that when you come to class, you're well prepared. You will, number 1, learn more. Number 2, I can just tell you, students in study groups tend to do better academically. They have not enormously higher grades, but slightly higher grades, just slightly. But number 3, it engages you on the campus. It engages you with friends. The engaging, on campus and with friends is a big deal. All right, here goes. That was suggestion number 5. Now let's move to suggestion 6. Harvard, because we are well off financially, it's a wonderful privilege. It's such a privilege I never take for granted being a teacher, an instructor, a professor here. Harvard has many what are called mentored research grants, meaning one of your children can apply, I'll make this up, to the European Research Center or the the David Rockefeller Latin American Studies Center, or something like that, and get a small grant, a little bit of money, $1,200, something like that, to do a bit of research. But what they have to do besides the research is connect with a supervisor. They need to connect with a professor. It could be somebody 67 years old. It could be somebody 31 years old. It doesn't matter. He or she, tall or short, none of that matters. The point just being they have to do something supervised. And many students report, and by the way, they don't get academic credit for this. That's a big point. Many students say, oh no, I have to only take my classes. Well, no, you might want to also add a few additional things to the classes, precisely because that's one of the things Harvard offers. I'm going to read one quote. It's such a simple, small quote, but it captures the whole idea. This is, I just have a note to myself. I'm going to read what a young woman said to an interviewer. It wasn't me, it was someone else. verbatim. These are her exact words. It's just one paragraph. This is after having done a mentored research internships. Again, the student, this was, I think, after sophomore year, not first year, after second year. And someone said to the student, what was it like, or was it worth your time? Here goes. The best part of this research mentorship has actually been having my supervisor. She is a role model. I know that sounds unbearably cheesy, but it's so true, particularly because my mentor, my senior partner, is only 10 years older than me. So it's been great to have someone who is right between myself and my mother. It has been, I always smile when I hear that. It has been inspiring to me that in just 10 short years, this woman has really gotten her act together, and she is really contributing to knowledge. I simply had no idea how a scientist, she happens to be a biologist, and I think I'm interested in biology, can agonize over the choice of practically every word in her project summaries and write-ups. Maybe I should have known this, but the fact is I didn't. It has completely changed the way I think about my own writing. I've come to enjoy enormously working at it, and it's been an unending effort. I have no doubt it'll continue. That's it. I hope what I read is clear, and it conveys the enthusiasm a young student, could be your daughter, could be your son, working with a research mentor. Basically, it's a one-on-one tutorial. It's what they have in Oxford and Cambridge, in England and the UK. All right, ready? Now there's time left, so I'm going to do the final two. Suggestion number 7, choosing a major, or what Harvard calls a concentration. Every student, usually in their second year, often early in their second year, declares a concentration, history, literature, biology, earth and planetary science, physics, math, computer science, whatever it may be. Here goes. So the point is, many of your children, many of your relatives will be deciding on what to concentrate in. My advice to you is encourage your children to choose courses now. I mean, not this fall because they're set, their courses are chosen, but how about this spring? And how about next fall, beginning of their second year? Choose courses that might help them maybe to decide on what they would like to concentrate in. And I'm going to share with you a true story about a young woman I know well who I interviewed. Her name is Susan. And I'm just going to tell you, it's a very simple story. I asked Susan the question as she was graduating from Harvard. She was a senior, and she was going to graduate in kind of a month. I was interviewing her in April of her senior year, near the end of the year. She was a very happy student. And I just said, Susan, tell me, how did you choose your concentration? And she said, I was very careful. I gave it a lot of thought. And I was trying to decide, I always had enjoyed science, so I thought maybe I should focus on a science. But then I also had always enjoyed history. So I was thinking, maybe history should be the winner. Maybe I should focus on history. So I said, well, that's very interesting. So how did you decide? And she said, well, I took a first-year seminar, a so-called freshman seminar. I guess it's now called first-year seminar, in the spring of my first year. And I wrote down the title, The Salem Witch Trials of the 17th Century and the Practice of Witchcraft. Now, I must confess, when she first uttered those words, my first thought was, at these prices? But then I began thinking about it and just said, well, gee, why did you choose that? That's sort of an obvious question. Where in the world did that come from? And her exact response was, well, Professor Light. I mean, she almost began interviewing me. She said, oh, Professor Light, witch trials, 17th century history? And I said, oh, yeah, I get it. It's a bit of history. And she said, witch trials, science? And I looked at her and said, Susan, I'm sorry, witch trials means something very different from science to me. I don't get it. She said, I should have realized. She said, I figured whatever witch trials were, she said, I knew nothing about it. And heaven knows I'm not a witch. But she just said, I just figured whatever witches do, it's the opposite of science. So the idea that I could, in a single class, get a sense of both of those, it might help me decide and choose a concentration thoughtfully. And she said, and finally I asked and then she said one more thing. She said, and I lucked out. I got a bonus when I chose this. This course was taught by a fabulous instructor, professor of Germanic and Scandinavian languages. But the point just is, young Susan just so much appreciated and enjoyed the professor. And she said the best part is it was a first-year seminar and there were only 12 students in the seminar. So I got to know the professor got to know me, I got to know most of the other students. Did I love the other 11 students, all of them? No, I liked about half of them. But she said, great, I have made 6 new friends or 5 new good friends. That was a success. She said, plus I had to speak up and talk in class because with 12 of us, you sort of can't, sitting around a round table, you can't hide. So the point of this all just is, this is a happy student. And if you're wondering about the end of the story, I said, Susan, I can't resist. What did you end up concentrating in? And she lit up like a Christmas tree. And she said, oh, I ended up concentrating in the fabulous major, which is one of the fastest growing at Harvard, history and science. It brings together some science with some history. And she was so happy. And that's the end of the story. So that's my 7th suggestion. Now here comes my 8th suggestion. And this is one that most families, most parents, I think, appreciate. But, there are going to be a few who may disagree with me. Well, fine, feel free to disagree. That's your privilege. But in this recording here, I'm going to just say, I'm reporting what students say. My colleagues and I interviewed a large number of graduating seniors. And my favorite question was simply, if you had a younger sibling, a younger sister, a younger brother, a close friend, a relative, your favorite cousin, were starting at Harvard, what is the single best bit of advice you would give to them about how to really make the most of this wonderful, amazing college experience at Harvard College? Let me share with you the most common reaction from graduating seniors. The most common response is, make an effort, be proactive. We all arrive here at Harvard College from our own backgrounds. You all come from very different backgrounds. Make an effort to seek out and befriend, make friends with, spend time with some people who disagree with you about something, some people who have different views from you. I mean, many people think of diversity as, the white student and the African-American and the Latino or Latina student or the Asian American student. That's great. There's an international student. That's great. That's great. The mixing and the mingling is great. But I'm really getting at something different. If you're so-called pro-choice, wonderful. Make friends with 1 or 2 people who might be pro-life, meaning the opposite, and have good conversations. If you are in favor of a certain immigration policy, wonderful, may you prosper. But seek out someone who maybe feels differently about it and, discuss it. And by the way, I should add, you may never, your student may never change your mind about what you think. But I will conclude this presentation by saying a number of students have commented, by seeking out people who don't all agree with me, it enriched my college experience. They asked me tough questions that I had never been asked before. And here's my favorite takeaway line. The students say, I didn't change my mind for most things that I believe, but for the first time I realized why I believe what I believe. And I can tell you, I view that just personally as a very powerful answer. And it's one of the beauties, the greatest things about attending Harvard College for any student. And that's each of your children or relatives, whoever it is, will meet people unlike they've ever met before. Sometimes people choose to live together. They come, if they're international students, they come from 2 countries that are practically at war with one another. But they make friends, they have good conversations, they even agree to disagree about many things, but it's a very nice situation. I'm now going to stop and say, I hope you all have a fabulous first-year family weekend. I hope if you're seeing this afterward that you had a fabulous first-year family weekend. And I hope you found even just a few of these 8 suggestions helpful. Have a nice rest of your day.